Here we go.
Great. Thank you. Welcome, everybody, to the Senate Democratic Caucus. It is the fourth or fifth day of spring, and it is so glorious outside, and we are battling away through crossover. I'm Allison Clarkson, Majority Leader of the Senate, and we are here today to discuss some of the bills that are coming up on the floor this week. And we're going to begin with a tee-up with our President Pro Tem, Becca Balint. Senator Balint.
Thank you, Senator Clarkson. I just wanted to acknowledge that I know a lot of folks within the caucus have been receiving a number of emails on S10, and we wanted to give you an update on where that stands. So I want to start with the fact that this bill is completely in line with our values. Your Senate Committee on Economic Development has been seeking to support workers and families as well as businesses in all of your communities. So our goal with S10 has always been to help employers and employees transition successfully out of the pandemic. We have sought a balance. We are still working to find that balance. We all want immediate relief for employers, and we want to offer some additional benefits for the unemployed, particularly Vermonters with dependent children. This has been our focus. We know that you share these values with us within this caucus, and we wanted you to know we are still very much working on a balance between these interests. And so I'm going to ask the Chair of Economic Development and Housing if he has anything that he'd like to add.
Just one general thought and then a specific thought. Generally, we thought we were going to have some time this morning to advance more details on it. We've asked for a bunch of new, very detailed charts from the Department of Labor. We literally got 6 minutes with those charts. So over the afternoon, we're in position to start reviewing them. One of the criticisms we've heard, and we're attempting to correct this, is that that people, with the $300 that people were going to get, they were going to get excessive amounts of money with what we were proposing. We only started our $80 add-on, which averages less than $80 in July, because of the way the UI system is constructed on a quarterly basis. But we're now feeling that we can change that startup to the date that the $300 goes away, which is September 6th, and people will be feeling the shock of that $300 loss in their weekly benefit. And now we help them a little bit by supplementing it with $80. So I think we're moving in that direction. But it's not it's more an optic thing than a big deal in terms of amount of dollars people would get. So I'll leave it at that until we do our further review, but we should have more for you tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sirotkin. We're now going to go to Senator White and talk about the cannabis bill, S25.
Thanks. So it really does 5 things, and we know that we always have to tweak legislation that gets passed. So this is this year's tweak. So on the opt-in, towns were required to have an opt-in in order to allow retail establishments. And what this bill says is that if they have not had such a vote by March 2023, which gives them time, that they will automatically be assumed to have be a town that allows establishments. They can change their mind afterwards if they want to, but if anybody has set up an establishment there in the meantime, they will be grandfathered. This is the way it was done with alcohol in the 60s, and the towns, if they didn't vote to not to be dry, they were assumed not to be dry. It also allows for an additional option for the removal of somebody on the Cannabis Control Board. As you know, there are 3 members. Well, there hopefully will be 3 members. The governor has not yet made any appointments, although the nominating committee sent him the names on February 17th. So it's been 5 weeks now, and we haven't heard that he's made any appointments. But anyway, so right now, the only way to get rid of somebody on the Cannabis Control Board is for the other two members to vote them off. And this allows for the 2/3 vote by the advisory committee. It also moves, excuse me, the medical program earlier than anticipated in the original bill. Moves it under the Cannabis Control Board instead of DPS. It establishes and pre-funds a business development fund that is designed to provide technical assistance and loans and grants to social equity applicants. And there is a process for defining who those applicants are. And it outlines what is expected in advertisement. And last year, a floor amendment prohibited all advertising. Our fear is that this would be found unconstitutional. And if it is challenged and found unconstitutional, then we have no guidelines at all. And it's an open market. And so this sets up the guidelines that would be required when advertising, and it applies them to the medical dispensaries as well. So that's really what the bill does. It isn't terribly complicated, but if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
No questions.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry, Dick.
Allison.
I mean, Senator McCormick.
Yeah, it's caucus, so Dick is fine. Yeah, the last year there was an objection raised that access to capital is an unequally borne problem for people of color, and that our emerging cannabis policy tended to favor people who did have access to capital, so that would have a de facto negative racial impact. Has any effort been made to address that?
That is exactly what the Business Development Fund does. It pre-funds it for $500,000, and it's meant exactly for that purpose.
Thanks. Well, have we heard from, for example, from Susanna Davis on this?
We've heard from everybody.
Okay, I mean, was she happy with what was, that this was addressing the concern?
We didn't hear that anybody was unhappy.
Okay, thanks.
Senator White, perhaps you could address, if we are already so behind on the timelines for the Cannabis Control Board and the Advisory Committee, how do we make up ground that we've lost on the timing of everything?
I have no idea whatsoever. It means that, hopefully it means that we put in there, as you'll see in the bill, that the appointments to the advisory committee have to be made by April 1st, and they have to have a meeting by April 15th. That's probably pretty unrealistic, since the bill wouldn't even pass by then. But we need to get these positions in place, and we need to push. And I believe that the only way this is going to happen is that if people out there in the broader world start putting pressure on the governor to make those appointments, because until those appointments are made, nothing can happen. And the people that we interviewed were committed to working really fast. All of them were people who had a background and were were aware of the issues involved, and I think are ready to start running as soon as appointments are made. So but I don't know how to make it up.
Okay, great. I see Senator Sears and Senator Pearson. Senator Sears.
Follow up. I was just going to follow up to the question. Number one, I think the governor is not happy with all the names that were submitted and wanted some other names, and I don't know what will happen with that. Secondly, Michelle Childs is the person who really has this timeline down pat, and I would suggest if we really have questions, about the timeline, we could invite Michelle to if you wrote a list of the questions, we can certainly either invite Michelle to the caucus, which I don't know if it's appropriate or not, but at least get answers to any questions about the timeline. She is probably the foremost expert on this bill and the original draft bill to tell us all. I do think it holds everything up.
Yeah.
And that is a problem, but how badly and how much can we recover so that we can get into business as soon as possible?
Right.
I don't know.
So can I just add something to the comment about the governor? We sent him 10 names, and he wrote, then these are all public documents. He wrote and said he wanted more names. And we wrote back and said that the process that we used was very thorough, and we sent him what we felt to be the best, the well-qualified candidates, and left it at that. And so it's in his lap now, and I would suggest that people start putting pressure on him. I don't know how else to do it.
Yeah, I would agree. Senator Pearson?
Thanks. Just another timeline issue. One of the risks
Yes, Phil.
has to do with the fees that the board is meant to recommend to us, to the legislature, by early April. That empowers the whole market to get up and running. We were really fearing that we were going to lose a year here. So what you'll see is an amendment from finance that has the board recommend fees to the Joint Fiscal Committee, just in a temporary first year kind of basis, so that we don't necessarily lose a whole year just because we're a couple of months behind. So you'll see that amendment as a finance report.
Got it. Does that have a trigger if we haven't acted by X time? I mean, if it doesn't have okay.
No, because we can't give them, we wouldn't probably want to, and we can't give them authority to raise fees. So we're trying to do this interim sort of half step so that we don't lose time, but we still have oversight.
Right. Thank you. Any other questions on cannabis at the moment?
Allison?
Is that Cheryl?
Yes, it is. Thank you. And Senator White, can you just expand on the advertisements? Did I hear you mention advertising?
Sure.
And
the original.
Is there anything about warnings, health warnings, like?
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't go into detail, but it's all in the bill, exactly what has to be in the advertisement, what can't be in the advertisements, and where they can be placed and where they can't be placed. So that's all in the bill. I don't have all the details in front of me, but there are 5 or 6 things that like it can't appeal to children. It can't be placed in some place where 15% of the readership or the audience is expected to be under the age of 21. It can't have false and misleading statements. It has to have a health comment on there that's developed by the board with the Department of Health. So there are a lot of details, and the real fear is that if we don't establish these and the court decides that what is currently in the bill, which is a complete prohibition, and that is found to be unconstitutional, then we'll have no guidelines. So we need to get this passed. And this a whole section was agreed on by both the House and Senate last year. And then there was a floor amendment that just blew it apart.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, anything else? Then I think we will go to S100. Bobby, Senator Starr, if you and Senator Pearson want to, I know numbers of people have been hearing about S100, both pro and con, and I just would love to have you give us an update on where we are with S100, the universal meals for our students. Senator Starr, you're muted.
Yeah, I can speak broadly of the bill, and then Senator Pearson and Senator Collum are going to be the reporters. We spent a great deal of time in ag the last 2 years, and then again this year on the universal meals issue. And of course, it's important to remember that during this past school year, we've had universal meals provided through USDA, and the importance of that and how well it went. And we do have 70 to 80 school districts already in Vermont that have been using universal meals over, the last 2, 3, and some even more years than that. And no complaints. Everything's gone very well. All the children eat regardless of their family's income. And yeah, I've said this several times, that it's important to remember that the children that have to pay for their hot lunches come from families that usually pay the bulk of the taxes in any town that they live in. They're higher income people, they're people that own property. And if school taxes go up a little bit, they're the ones that pay the bulk of the school taxes. And there's nobody that runs away, such as a hot lunch agent, with any money, because there's no money there. They all the children eat, and it just makes for a lot better atmosphere at the school. And of course, the facts are that kids learn better, they behave better, they don't get tired as quick if they're properly fed. So, I think we've got a bill that also helps local growers of local foods because they'd be an outlet for them to sell these year round to our school systems. So I'll leave it at that. There's been some inflated numbers that were presented to some of us about a $50 million price tag and all this, and we've dug into that, and the numbers somewhere is between 25 and 30 at the best, and that's with most all the children eating every meal that's provided. So I'll just leave it at that. Oh, and the other thing that's interesting, that was interested in our committee, was it got time to move the bill, and I was constantly, as chair, wondering, is this going to be a 3-2 vote, or are we going to be squeaking to get it out of the room? And finally, the time came to move the bill, and I said, well, is there anybody that would like to move the bill? And Collmore jumped to the occasion, and Corey Parent was right behind him with a second. And so, from that, I think we must have a pretty good bill there, and with a lot of broad support. And I think its time has come. It's proven itself, over the years, and would hope that we as a caucus could support it. I'll let Chris give you the highlights of the bill.
Okay, Senator Pearson, and then Senator Campion. I see that Senator McCormick has a question, but we'll wait for the first.
I'll wait.
Okay, great. Thanks. Senator
Nope.
Pierce.
Thanks. Just Bobby covered most of this, but already and pre-COVID, 70 of our schools at least already did this. In coming out of the last recession, we were getting towards a data points of 1 in 10 Vermonters expressing food insecurity. Over the pandemic, we all remember the stories of the food drops with thousands of people waiting all day in line. The numbers that by the same metric where we normally are 1 in 10 are 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 Vermonters declaring food insecurity. This is really scary, and that's not going away. That's not going away when the executive order, emergency order is lifted, right? That's going to take time to recover. So this seems like a foundation to me. The other thing is the local foods piece of this, which is why Ag started. I don't know why you muted me. Okay. We're building off of what they're doing in New York, Michigan, Oregon, maybe New Mexico, and that is an incentive for schools to buy more food locally. And so the structure and gather this struck in the amendment, but we want to talk about it anyway because we want to get there. Basically, if school's buying 20% local, we'll give them 20 cents a meal. If they're buying 25% local, we'll give them 25 cents a meal. I'm not sure who needs.
Somebody has
a
conversation in the background.
So this is working really well in New York. They reported a school's buying 67% local. And what it's doing is why we want to do that, why we're excited about this, is it's allowing businesses and producers and farmers to have a dependable base market and set up their own infrastructure, knowing that schools are reliably going to be there. And it is working in other states. It's a modest investment. Every dollar you invest here is $1.60 in the local economy. And we've done well in our farm to school stuff, but it's time to take it to the next level and make this across the board. So I just want to say we're pairing that. And for folks who are nervous about it, you can ask them, well, are you opposed to feeding kids or supporting farmers? It's been a potent combination, and I hope we can move this forward.
You're muted, Senator Clarkson.
Oh, I didn't do that. Senator Campion, to you, and then we'll open it to questions.
Yeah, thanks so much. I just want to let senators know that this did come through Senate Education after Senate Agriculture, and we voted it out favorably 6-0-0. I think I'm representing the committee well by saying that people were very enthusiastic about this. I mean, it really does address a need that is in our schools. It gets rid of the stigma for those that can't afford free lunch or can't afford lunches. It also sets up a level, as Senator Pearson said, of predictability for farmers. I mean, down in this region, this in so many ways could be is an economic development tool where young farmers who are moving into this region would know that they have to produce a certain amount of carrots or whatever it is that the school needs. And that kind of predictability in the market is particularly down here, and I'm sure for the rest of the state, is a real win-win. The other thing I think it does in the long run is I think in some ways it's a money saver, because I think you're going to get healthier kids. You're going to get children that know about, how to eat well, how to eat better. And in the long run, I think we're going to see health outcomes that are better. So we know that APROPS and perhaps finance are looking at this, and we recognize it's a heavy lift, and hoping though that something can get started this year. And just really want to thank Senator Pearson and Senator Starr for their work and the committee's work. I know this is something both of them have been talking about for a long time, and it's exciting to see. So thank you.
Thank you. It is exciting. We have a couple questions lined up already. We have Senator McCormick and then Senator Perchlik.
Okay, thanks. I'm sold. I think this is a good bill, but help me. How do I answer my school boards who make the argument, if it's such a great idea and it's so affordable, then why doesn't the state pay for it? With the state is mandating it, why doesn't the state pay for it? How do I answer them?
If I may, I would ask them what they're going to use their 300 million new dollars that they've got coming their way. What are they going to use that for? And that's what I'm going to ask my superintendent or two superintendents up in my own district. You know, I think it's just as important to have children eat properly as it is to take the right courses of education in the school. And, you know, I could be wrong, but I did spend, 21 years on the local school board and chaired it for most of those years. So I know we had universal meals way back when I was on the school board. Our school board committee set up. Why shouldn't the school be a little bit involved in it? Most of the taxes come out of the property tax that comes to Montpelier, and we subsidize that with our sales taxes and a variety of other taxes. So I don't know why they're so shook up about that, but I'm not a bit shy about talking with them, I'll tell you that.
We're shocked and so surprised. Senator Perchlik and then Senator Hardy.
Yeah, I had a similar question. I thought that maybe appropriations was gonna maybe do something different with how it is funded, but it sounds from Bobby they're not going to do that now.
Yeah.
I think the concern is that the difference is that they have to have a local vote on it, and so if the vote doesn't pass and you can't take out of here, then what my school boards are saying, like that means they're going to have to take some education thing out of the budget to get it to pass.
I have Senator Kitchell, I think, wanting to respond to that.
Well, I think this is the nature of the feedback that we've been getting. And the reason we let the bill go out, it had universal support. The bill came and treated it as an education expense, the same as other areas. And it is true. The impact, there's no such thing as a free lunch. And I think this is what we're seeing here. But there was a recognition that, yes, there is a cost attached. The ability of the general fund to pick up this educational cost does not exist. If any of you are familiar with the pressure on the general fund. And there will be federal money for the first couple of years, but that's time limited. Don't think that that's ongoing. But there are schools that will continue because of the threshold of the percentage of children who are participating in the food stamp program. And so ultimately, school boards are concerned, I think Senator Perchlik is right, that it will create greater pressure in outer years on their school budgets and when they bring them up for a vote. But the benefit of the meals and the policies attached were in the end determined to be supported strongly by the policy committees. And so the recommended funding was out of the education fund. And we know that the take-up is hard to predict. Joint Fiscal had suggested 25 million or more. I can't prejudge that that's not incorrect, but the question is when those expenses would start being experienced, because that is going to depend on the take-up rate of the schools over that 5-year period of time. Right. And what the fund will look like, what the revenues are coming in, we know that there will be some increases, obviously, but the ultimate fallback is property taxes, and we might as well be honest about that. that that is the potential with this bill. And it gets into the very situation that Senator Perchlik talked about, and that is how that might compete with other educational needs within that town budget.
Right. Thank you, Senator Kitchell. I have Senator Hardy and Senator Bray, I believe, are the next questions. Senator Hardy?
Thank you, Allison. Senator Kitchell answered most of my questions. I wanted to understand better what the Appropriations Committee did in their amendment. I haven't seen it yet, but it sounds like you took out the local foods portion of the bill and you took out the appropriations. But did you include any language about the funding for the Universal Schools Meal portion of the program?
Yes, that is included in there, and it's clear that it's an educational related expenditure.
Okay, and you left in the 5-year
Yes.
phase-in language.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
is there any reference to federal funding and use of federal dollars, the ESSER
Yes.
funding?
Yeah. Yes, there is.
There is. So that's sort of made clear that we have the expectation that school districts would use some of that funding to help with the transition. Is that true?
I would say that that would be true. We didn't get into that level of discussion in appropriations. I would think with the consultation we're giving to schools, they will know that that's a use of the ESSER money out over the next couple of years. Also, on an ongoing basis, I believe that there is a section that talks about, because of that USDA provision to provide universal meals, if that threshold is met, want to make sure that every effort to leverage that that funding to support universal meals in those schools with a high percentage of kids from lower incomes continues to flow. So that that part, as it relates to the universal meals, remained intact. What we pulled were the appropriations related to the local food products and so forth, because that would be done as we always do within the budget.
Okay.
So you pulled the incentives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about the farm to school grants? Is that also was pulled out of the bill?
Yeah, and a lot of those grants, in fact, are for items that could be funded under the ESSER money. Actually, the money through ESSER was so much greater. I mean, that I understood some of that went to provide refrigeration or freezers for storage of food. So we've got actually anything that we've been able to do in the past is really, I hate to say it, mouse meat compared to the millions of dollars that are going out to the schools that could be used for this very purpose.
Right. Okay. Thank you. That helps.
Yes, that's terrific. And I see Senator Bray. Senator Pearson, did you want to add something, or have you?
Just two quick comments. There's a lot of discussion about at the federal level of also making changes. So that's promising. And it's not automatic that this, if there is a funding shortage, goes to the property tax, because the sales tax has been performing very strong. There's all this federal stimulus that is likely to show up in purchases. So we can't say for certainty that it's not going to hit the property tax, but there's a good likelihood that it'll get absorbed in the growth in the sales tax performance. So just point that out.
Particularly in the outer years, because you've got your ESSER for what, next couple of years. So
yeah, next 4 years they got federal money. Senator Bray.
Yeah. So I appreciate that people are paying so much attention to the money and all the ways of funding it. I think that's great. I just wanted to go back to where we started, and this comes from my grandmother. Good food is the foundation of good health. And it really seems like if there were ever something that we would all agree to, is that when kids are in our care, we would want to support their health. I still remember April 14th, 2007, the NIH came out with a meta-study. It looked at hundreds of research papers and gathered together the picture that for the first time in 100 years, the life expectancy of children born that year was shorter than their parents. And it was because of health related mostly to around food. And so, I mean, as well as some environmental toxins, but that's the on our watch, that has happened. So really providing a fundamental service, trying to help people eat well, just seems like I can't imagine a more appropriate mission for us to take on. So thank you.
I think that's great. Anybody else? Great, thank you. Thank you so much. I believe, unless somebody else has, we have about 8 more minutes. And Senator Campion, did you want to briefly talk about S13?
Thanks, Senator Clarkson. Senator Perchlik actually went over the bill, I think, during the last caucus.
Right, I thought. Was there any?
Yeah, I don't think there's any additions, really. We are taking it up on the floor tomorrow. I'll present it, and there's also an amendment coming from our committee that incorporates one other group into this discussion, and that is the independent school group. Senators may recall that in this implementation plan, the committee that is targeted with this work is asked to incorporate comments and discussions with the Vermont Principals Association, School Boards Association, etc. And the independent schools asked to be have a seat at the table. And I believe we will approve an amendment this afternoon related to that. So that's where things are at. Thank you.
Great, great. I think, and do people have something else they want to discuss briefly before we end a little early? Because I know committees will be starting soon. Yes, Senator Bray.
Thank you. So there's 2 bills that we've been working on with other committees. S102 is the compost bill, and Senate Natural and Senate Ag have had discussions, and we're fine-tuning an amendment, and we'll pass that back before the Ag Committee, before we're on the floor tomorrow. So I just wanted to let people know that I think we're other than a very fine tweak, just to make sure we have appropriate cross-reference, I think we're all there in the same place. So sometimes when we have 2 committees working on something, we want to iron it out before the floor. And I think the same thing is also true of S101, the housing bill, which some people have been getting email related to the water connections provisions in sections 10 and 11. And I'm happy to speak to those. We also have an amendment. Members of Natural Resources have an amendment to 101. And I think it's also, as best I understand, agreeable to economic development. And if people have questions about it, I can explain it, or we can just press on.
Any questions on the water aspect of the Smart Growth Bill 101? Okay, great. Then I think we have 5 minutes. I'm just going to quickly say that the rental housing health and safety bill, I have information on it, as you know. I just want to remind everybody that it's really a consumer protection bill designed to protect our Vermont renters and landlords by ensuring healthy and safe housing. And it has a provision for our very popular VHIP, Vermont Housing Investment Program, which rehabilitates affordable housing units in our and apartments in our downtowns and village centers in particular that are vacant, blighted, and in need of weatherization and are non-code compliant. So I just want to remind you that the landscape is we have about 80,000 rental units, of which 4,000 are vacant right now, and about 7,000 are substandard. So this is a big issue. Our town health officers are wanting very much to pass off and provide equitable and consistent inspection around the state. 6 of our towns already have enacted and created their own inspection opportunities, some with registries, some use their grand list, but it is a major need, and it is complaint driven. This is not, it changes almost nothing except that does set up the registry, which I've talked about, and it sets up a fee to make that possible. So if you have questions, please reach out. I know we're almost at the end of time. Senator McCormick.
Yeah, since this bill does deal with housing, would this be a good vehicle to deal with landlords who have really been knocked for a loop by the COVID provisions, the rent moratorium, and also just the inability to evict people? Some tenants are badly in need of eviction, and the landlords are powerless. Is this a vehicle that we could address those issues?
We have not taken that issue up, although it is on our list of things we need to chat about, and it's an interplay with judiciary and with the feds. So, Senator Sirotkin, do you want to speak to that at all? You're muted, my dear.
We're still under the restrictions of the court as well. So if you recall, our eviction moratorium lasted a month past lifting of the pandemic order, which we hope will be lifted soon. The courts had their own restrictions in terms of there having to be a crisis before they would grant a hearing. I don't think that has changed. And we were affecting a very small piece of the landlord tenant situation. But as my vice chair has said, we are aware of the concern, and we will be taking that up in the second half of this year.
Yeah. Thank you. I think we are at time unless anybody has any other questions. I see Senator White.
I was just going to say that I've heard from a number of health officers who are very happy to have the inspections go someplace else. But a number of them didn't know that it also involved a registry of every rental. They didn't put those two things together.
Anybody else? I think I'm going to let you, we're going to be out in time. So I bid you all adieu. Have a great and productive afternoon. Thank you so much. And more to follow.